What if a small dollar coin that most people would barely notice is hiding a detail that collectors have been searching for? The Susan B. Anthony dollar has an unforgettable place in American coin history, and some examples can become especially interesting when you know exactly what to look for. Welcome back to Change Your Life. Today's countdown features 3 Susan B. Anthony dollars. 1979 as Susan B. Anthony dollar. 1999 P. Susan B. Anthony dollar. 1979 D. Susan B. Anthony dollar. These cupro-nickel-clad dollar coins carry an iconic reverse design connected with the Apollo 11 moon landing, making them a fascinating part of modern American coin history. Many surviving examples are dirty, worn, and heavily circulated, but collectors don't stop at appearance. They check the mint mark, varieties, striking characteristics, errors, and other small details that can make one coin far more interesting than another. So before you dismiss an old Susan B. Anthony dollar as just another $1 coin, look closely. Stay until the end, because the final coin could have the detail that makes today's countdown especially interesting. Now, let's uncover coin number 1.
What if a 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar sitting unnoticed in an old drawer could contain a tiny detail that completely changes the way collectors look at it? At first glance, it doesn't seem extraordinary. It's a $1 coin. It's worn. Maybe the surface is scratched. Maybe the once bright metal has become dull after years of circulation. And maybe you found it mixed in with ordinary coins that nobody thought were worth checking. But turn it over, and the story suddenly becomes much bigger. There is an American eagle descending toward the surface of the moon, holding an olive branch in its talons. Behind it is Earth. Above it is E pluribus unum. Around the design are 13 stars. And along the top, United States of America. At the bottom, $1. This reverse wasn't created from scratch for Susan B. Anthony. It was adapted from the Apollo 11 mission insignia previously used on the Eisenhower dollar. The U.S. Mint confirms that the Susan B. Anthony dollar reverse features an eagle landing on the moon based on that Apollo 11 design. And that gives this little dollar an extraordinary connection to one of the most famous moments in American history. But now turn the coin back over. Look at the woman on the front. Susan B. Anthony. She was a major leader in the American women's suffrage movement. The U.S. Mint describes this coin as the first U.S. circulating coin to feature a non-mythical woman. And that made the $1,979 historically important from the moment it entered circulation. Now look just above Susan B. Anthony's shoulder. You should find the S Mint mark. That tiny letter tells you the coin was struck at the San Francisco Mint. And that little s is exactly where this particular coin gets interesting. Because the 1979 S Susan B. Anthony dollar exists in both circulation strike and proof versions, and collectors recognize different S Mint mark varieties. Coin World identifies both a filled S and a clear S variety for 1979 S coins. So don't simply see 1979 S and assume you've finished your inspection. You haven't. The mint mark deserves a second look. Now here's the first thing you need to understand. The ordinary 1979 S circulation issue had a mintage of approximately 109.576 million coins. That's a lot of coins. So a normal, dirty, heavily circulated 1979 S isn't automatically a rare fortune. But collectors aren't always looking for the ordinary coin. They're looking for varieties, errors, exceptional condition, and unusual characteristics. And that means your worn example still deserves an inspection. Start with the obverse. Look at Susan B. Anthony's portrait. Look at the word Liberty. Check. In God we trust. Then look at the year 1979. And finally, find that tiny S. Don't rush past it. Use magnification. Look at its shape. Compare it with photographs of known 1979S varieties. Because the 1979S series is famous for differences in the appearance of the S mint mark. But there's an important warning here. Not every slightly blurry S is a rare variety. Circulation wear can change how a mint mark looks. Dirt can fill tiny spaces. Damage can distort edges. And photographs can make ordinary differences look dramatic. So comparison is essential. Now turn the coin over. Study the eagle. Look at the moon. Look at Earth. Look at the olive branch. Look at the stars. And inspect the lettering. Then ask yourself, does anything look genuinely different from a normal example? Maybe the coin has an unusual strike. Maybe there's apparent doubling. Maybe there's a die crack. Maybe there's a struck-through area. Maybe the coin is noticeably off-center. Or maybe it's simply a heavily circulated dollar that has spent decades being handled. That distinction matters. Because damage is not the same as a mint error. A scratch isn't automatically valuable. A dent isn't automatically a rare variety. And discoloration doesn't prove anything. The feature needs to be evaluated as a possible mint-made characteristic. And because your coin is described as dirty and heavily circulated, there could be plenty of post-mint damage hiding in plain sight. So here's one rule you should follow immediately. Do not clean this coin. Don't polish it. Don't use metal cleaner. Don't scrub the surfaces. Don't scrape the dark areas. The Susan B. Anthony dollar is a clad coin. The outer layers are copper-nickel bonded to a copper core. The U.S. Mint lists its composition as copper-nickel clad, while detailed specifications give it a weight of about 8.1 grams, diameter of 26.5 millimeters, and a reeded edge. Aggressive cleaning can permanently change the coin's surfaces. Instead, preserve it exactly as you found it. Photograph both sides. Photograph the mint mark. Use magnification. Check the edge. And compare it with a normal 1979S. Because sometimes, the difference between an ordinary dollar and an interesting collectible isn't obvious. It can be hidden inside one tiny letter. And that tiny letter is exactly what makes the 1979S Susan B. Anthony dollar worth a second look. The 1979S Susan B. Anthony dollar is where a tiny detail can make this coin much more interesting. The standard 1979S circulation issue had a mintage of 109,576,000, so a normal, heavily circulated example is not automatically rare. But there's a famous story surrounding the S mint mark. Look at the obverse. Just to the left of Susan B. Anthony's portrait, you'll find the small s. Now examine it under magnification. Because in 1979, San Francisco used different S mint mark punches during the year. Collectors recognize the filled S and clear S varieties on 1979S proof dollars. The clear S is sharper and more distinctly formed, while the earlier filled S has a more rounded, filled-in appearance. And here's an extremely important point. The famous Type 1 and Type 2S varieties apply to the 1979S proof coins, not simply every circulated 1979S dollar. That distinction can save you from a lot of misinformation. So if your coin is a dirty, heavily circulated 1979S, don't automatically call a different-looking S a rare Type 2. First determine whether you're actually looking at a proof coin. A genuine proof normally has specially prepared surfaces with mirror-like fields and strong contrast between the reflective background and the design. A normal circulation strike is different. That's why the entire coin needs to be examined, not just the mint mark. Now look at the reverse. You'll see the eagle descending toward the moon. This design was adapted from the Apollo 11 mission insignia, connecting the Susan B. Anthony dollar to America's historic moon landing era. What if one of the last Susan B. Anthony dollars ever made is sitting unnoticed in an old collection? The 1999 Susan B. Anthony dollar can look almost ordinary. It's dirty. It may be heavily circulated. The surfaces may show scratches and contact marks. And because it's only a $1 coin, many people might never think to inspect it carefully. But there's something unusual about the 1999 date. The Susan B. Anthony dollar had been absent from regular production since 1981. Then, in 1999, it suddenly came back. The U.S. Mint announced that it would strike 1999 dated Susan B. Anthony dollars because supplies of the earlier coins were running low while the country was waiting for the new dollar coin that would become the Sacagawea dollar. That makes 1999 a fascinating final chapter in the original Susan B. Anthony dollar series. And your P mint mark makes it even easier to identify. Look just above Susan B. Anthony's right shoulder. There it is. P. That means Philadelphia Mint. The 1999 P circulation issue had a mintage of approximately 29,592,000 coins. That's considerably fewer than the enormous production number seen on some earlier Susan B. Anthony issues. But here's where we need to be careful. Lower mintage doesn't automatically mean extremely rare. PCGS describes the regular 1999 P as common overall, with ordinary examples readily available in uncirculated grades. So a dirty, heavily circulated 1999 P shouldn't automatically be called a fortune. The real question is, what condition is yours in? And, does it have anything unusual about it? Start with the obverse. Look at Susan B. Anthony. Check the word liberty. Look at In God We Trust. Then find the date 1999. And finally, inspect that tiny P mint mark. Now turn the coin over. You'll see the famous eagle descending toward the moon. Earth is visible in the background. The eagle holds an olive branch. 13 stars surround the design. And the reverse carries the inscriptions. United States of America. E pluribus unum. $1. The U.S. Mint confirms that this reverse is an adaptation of the Apollo 11 insignia. So this little dollar connects two remarkable pieces of American history. Susan B. Anthony and the women's suffrage movement. And America's journey to the moon. But now look at the coin's surface. Your example is described as dirty, worn, and heavily circulated. That means you should expect plenty of normal wear. Scratches. Contact marks. Dull surfaces. Flattened details. Maybe even small dents. None of those automatically make the coin rare. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes new collectors make is confusing circulation damage with mint errors. A scratch isn't automatically an error. A dent isn't automatically a variety. And a strange mark isn't automatically proof of a mistake at the mint. Instead, look for characteristics that could have been created during production. For example, doubled features, die cracks, die chips, struck-through errors, off-center strikes, clipped planchets. But every suspected error needs to be compared with a normal example. And there's another reason the 1999 P deserves attention. It was the last circulation year of the Susan B. Anthony dollar. The series had originally run from 1979 through 1981 before returning in 1999. So when you hold a 1999 P, you're not simply holding another dollar. You're holding the final circulation chapter of a coin series that began 20 years earlier. And the story gets even more interesting when you consider why the mint brought it back. Demand for dollar coins was increasing in places such as mass transit and vending operations, and the mint wanted enough dollars available until the new Sacagawea dollar could enter production. That means the 1999 Susan B. Anthony dollar wasn't brought back because the design suddenly became popular with collectors. It was brought back because the country needed more small dollar coins. And that makes the 1999 issue a fascinating historical time capsule. Now, there's one thing you absolutely should not do. Don't clean it. Don't polish Susan B. Anthony. Don't scrub the reverse. Don't use metal cleaner. Don't scrape away dark areas. The standard coin is copper nickel clad, with a copper core and nickel-bearing outer layers. It weighs approximately 8.1 grams, measures 26.5 millimeters, and has a reeded edge. Aggressive cleaning can permanently change the surfaces. Instead, preserve the coin exactly as you found it. Take clear photographs. Use magnification. Check the mint mark. Study the date. Inspect the portrait. Then turn it over and examine the Apollo 11 inspired reverse. Look at the eagle. Look at the moon. Look at Earth. Look at the stars. And compare your coin with a normal 1999p example. Because sometimes, the most important clue isn't the fact that the coin is old. It's the fact that something about your particular example doesn't match the ordinary version. And that's where the real investigation begins. The 1999p Susan B. Anthony dollar becomes especially interesting when you realize just how unusual its place in the series really is. This was the final year in which Susan B. Anthony dollars were struck for circulation. The Philadelphia Mint produced 29,592,000 regular strike 1999p dollars. That sounds like a huge number. And it is. So if your coin is dirty, worn, and heavily circulated, don't assume the 1999 date alone makes it extremely rare. In fact, PCGS describes the regular 1999p as common in most grades, with the real scarcity appearing at the very highest uncirculated levels. And that's where the story takes an interesting turn. Imagine finding two 1999p Susan B. Anthony dollars. The first has spent years moving through circulation. Its surfaces are dull. The portrait has contact marks. The lettering is slightly worn. The eagle and moon are no longer sharply defined. That coin is exactly what you'd expect from a circulated dollar. Now imagine another 1999p. It has almost no signs of circulation. The fields are remarkably clean. The portrait is extremely sharp. The reverse details are strong. And the coin has the kind of preservation that makes a grader stop and look twice. Suddenly, you're dealing with a completely different collector proposition. PCGS estimates that only about 147,950 1999p examples survive at MS65 or better, and the highest certified grades become dramatically scarcer. That's an important lesson. It's the condition. Now there's another fascinating 1999p you should know about. The 1999p proof Susan B. Anthony dollar. PCGS records a proof mintage of approximately 740,000 for its listed variety. What if a 1979D Susan B. Anthony dollar sitting in an old drawer looks completely ordinary, but one tiny detail could make you want to inspect it much more carefully? At first glance, this coin doesn't look special. It's worn. It's dirty. It may have scratches from decades of circulation. And because it says $1, many people might simply spend it without giving it another thought. But look at the date. 1979. This was the very first year the Susan B. Anthony dollar entered circulation. And now look beside Susan B. Anthony's portrait. You'll find a tiny letter. D. That small D tells you this coin was struck at the Denver Mint. And here's the first surprising fact. The Denver Mint produced 288,015,744 Susan B. Anthony dollars in 1979. That's a huge production number, which means an ordinary worn 1979D isn't automatically a rare coin. but that doesn't mean you should ignore it. Because collectors don't simply look at the date. They look at the details. And the 1979 D has an important story of its own. The Susan B. Anthony dollar was introduced as a completely new small dollar coin, replacing the much larger Eisenhower dollar. The U.S. Mint says it was the first U.S. circulating coin to feature a non-mythical woman, honoring women's suffrage leader Susan B. Anthony. That makes the coin historically significant from the very beginning. Now turn it over. There is the famous American eagle. It's shown landing on the moon. Earth appears in the background. The eagle carries an olive branch. And 13 stars surround the design. This reverse is an adaptation of the Apollo 11 mission insignia that had previously appeared on the Eisenhower dollar. So this tiny $1 coin connects two powerful American stories. Susan B. Anthony's fight for women's suffrage. And America's journey to the moon. Now look back at the obverse. Study Susan B. Anthony's portrait. Look at liberty. Look at I in God we trust. Look at the date. And then, look carefully at that D. The mint mark is located near Anthony's shoulder. Now here's where collectors need to be careful. The 1979 D is not famous for having multiple standard mint mark varieties in the way the 1979 S proof is. PCGS's reference identifies the 1979 D business strike as one standard variety. If someone tells you that every slightly different looking D is automatically a rare variety, be skeptical. Instead, focus on genuine condition differences and actual mint-made errors. And condition can make a surprisingly big difference. A heavily circulated 1979 D may have softened details, scratches and contact marks. That's normal. But an exceptionally preserved example can be considerably more interesting. Current market guides show ordinary circulated 1979 D dollars generally around face value, while higher mint state grades can bring premiums. That means the coin in your hand could fall into two very different categories. Category 1. A normal, heavily circulated 1979 D. Interesting historically, but generally not a major rarity. Category 2. A remarkably preserved coin. Or an example with a genuine mint-made error. Now you're talking about something worth investigating. So what should you look for? Start with the surface. Look for unusual doubling. Look for die cracks. Look for die chips. Look for areas where the design appears incomplete. Look for an unusual strike. Look at the rim. And inspect the edge. But remember, a damaged coin isn't necessarily an error. A scratch created in someone's pocket is not a mint error. A dent caused by dropping the coin isn't a mint error. And a strange dark spot doesn't automatically mean anything. The key question is, was the feature created at the mint? Or did it happen after the coin entered circulation? That's why comparison is so important. Put your 1979 D beside another normal Susan B. Anthony dollar. Compare the portrait. Compare the date. Compare the mint mark. Compare the lettering. Compare the reverse. And if something looks unusual, photograph it under magnification. Now there's another detail worth knowing. The standard 1979 D is a copper-nickel-clad coin. The U.S. Mint describes the Susan B. Anthony dollar composition as copper-nickel-clad, and detailed specifications list the coin at approximately 8.1 grams, 26.5 millimeters in diameter, with a reeded edge. So if you're investigating a suspicious coin, you can compare its physical characteristics with a normal example. But don't make the mistake of assuming that an unusual weight automatically proves a valuable error. There can be many reasons a coin weighs differently. Wear, damage, environmental effects, counterfeiting, or measurement problems. Everything needs to be considered together. And there's one rule you should follow before doing anything else. Prohibited: don't clean it. Don't polish Susan B. Anthony. Don't scrub the moon. Don't use metal cleaner. Don't scrape the dark areas. And don't try to make the coin look brand new. A coin's original surface can be important when evaluating its condition. Instead, leave it exactly as you found it. Take photographs. Check the date. Check the D. Study the portrait. Inspect the reverse. Look at the edge. And compare it with another 1979 D. Because sometimes, the most interesting clue isn't something huge. It's something tiny. A small difference. A strange strike. An unusual feature. Or a condition level that almost never survives in everyday circulation. And that's why this apparently ordinary 1979 D Susan B. Anthony dollar deserves a second look. Now let's take a closer look at what can actually make the 1979 D Susan B. Anthony dollar interesting to collectors. The Denver Mint struck 288,015,744 of these coins in 1979, so the ordinary circulated example is not considered a major rarity. PCGS estimates that millions survive, although very high-grade pieces become much harder to find. That distinction is extremely important. If your coin is dirty, worn, and heavily circulated, don't assume the date alone makes it worth hundreds or thousands. But if you discover an unusually well-preserved example, the story can change. PCGS notes that examples around MS66 and higher become scarce, with MS67 pieces particularly difficult to find. And the auction history shows just how dramatic the difference can become at the very top. PCGS records a $1,528 auction result for a 1979 DMS68. That doesn't mean your worn coin is worth $1,500. It means condition can completely change the collector market for the same date and mint mark.